And welcome to the Culture Cast. I am your host, Chris Dashew, and I am joined by my good friend, my brother from another mother, who shares a birthday. We share a birthday together, so I don't have ownership of that day any more than he does. Father Malone.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Noirvember.
Whoa, welcome to my nightmare. I'm going to make you feel right at home. So, yeah, like you mentioned on this episode of the Culture Cast, we are kicking off Noirvember with a look at Dark Passage, film from 1947 that is based on the book by David Goodis. So let's get right to it.
You remember this one? Boy, they really made that torrid zone sizzle. And this one? Big? It was colossal. Wait till you see this one. Take it from a guy who sees them all. It's the best yet.
You won't tell me because you think I'll come there. You think I'd follow you.
You'd be insane to follow me.
Was I insane to pick you up on the road? Was I crazy to let you stay here? I thought I had a pretty good life here, but your going away doesn't make it seem good anymore.
No, I've got the Indian sign on me. It seems I can't win.
I've sort of joined your team. Don't look forward to being without you.
When I leave here, you're off my team. Lucky to be.
You're a guy with plenty of trouble.
I'll have a trouble in the world.
Don't tell me, brother. I know. Your trouble is women.
I've cried myself to sleep at night because of you. She's got you now. She wants you very badly, doesn't she? She's willing to run away with you and keep on running and ruin everything for herself. So she doesn't have you now, and she'll never have you.
So the film is directed by Delmer Daves. The screenplay is written by Delmer Daves. It stars Humphrey Bogart. Bogart? Is that how you say his last name? Humphrey Bogart.
Bogart. Bogart.
What's in the cabinet, Harry? Is it a Bogart? No, Humphrey Bogart. And Lauren Bacall, his, I believe, at the time, girlfriend. They ended up getting married.
Yeah.
So, couple things before I ask your opinion. I just want you to know, this is the first time I've ever seen a Humphrey Bogart film.
What?
Yeah, man. So,
wow.
With that,
okay.
And it's just a weird cinematic blind spot that I have of just like...
Evidently.
Yeah. I mean, I admit it. I'm not making shit up. So, Mike. So, Father Malone. This was not the first time you'd seen this film. But when was the first time you'd seen this film? What did you think of the film then, and what do you think of the film now, revisiting it for the Culture Cast?
This is going to be kind of a long-winded story, so I apologize. This actually was the first time I've seen this movie, but it was not supposed to be the first time I saw this movie. Now, as you know, Chris, I was a movie theater projectionist for about 20 years, and my career in that started around 1992. I worked at a movie theater that is no longer there. It's the New Wilshire in Santa Monica. And we were kind of an art house and revival house simultaneously because we had two screens. So at any one time, you would have a brand new art house feature, and on the other screen, we would have a revival. So we happened to be showing a Humphrey Bogart film festival on the revival screen. So that week, I got to see a ton of great old Humphrey Bogart films, including like Dead End and The Petrified Forest. And I arrived early one morning to build up the print for Dark Passage, which I had read about but I had never seen, so I was excited to show it and watch it. and I got the print built and had it ready to go, and suddenly the phone in the projection booth started to ring, which was a rarity, and it was a fellow projectionist who lived in Hollywood, and he called and said, "Hey, Mike, I don't think you want to go home tonight." At the time, I was attending the University of Southern California, which is basically South Central Los Angeles. And I said, "Why? What's going on?"
Basically, the hood.
Yeah, and he said, "Well, it seems like people are just pulling people out of cars and beating on them." And I was like, "What?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'm watching the news right now. Oh my God! Oh God! They got a guy out of his truck. Oh no!" So it was the day of the LA riots. So, needless to say, we shut down early that day, and I went and stayed with a friend, actually a friend's father. And this is a kind of interesting. I don't know if you've seen the movie Into the Night, the John Landis film with Jeff Goldblum and Michelle Pfeiffer. But there's a quartet of Iranian secret police that are chasing them down for the entire movie, and the leader of that is a guy named Behrouz Garamian. He was an Iranian filmmaker who escaped Iran during the revolution, and since had been trying to work in Hollywood, and gotten John Landis had hired him for this role. So I ended up spending the nights of the LA riots at Behrouz Garamian's house. In fact, during the LA riots, Behrouz was like, "Hey, Michael, it's like the revolution. Come on, let's go see it." And we got in his car and we drove around Los Angeles, where he was driving with a pistol in one hand, just in case we got attacked. So, needless to say, that attempt to see Dark Passage the first time did not occur, and somehow I have not seen it until I watched it for this podcast. So, you are actually getting me fresh as far as my opinion of the movie. And I really liked this movie a lot. That was long-winded, I know, but I warned you.
I went into this movie with an open mind. I went into this movie with no expectations, and I felt like the first half an hour, 45 minutes was interesting. And then once we get past when he goes into plastic surgery, has his face redone, and we actually see, it is. I mean, the whole idea of we're not going to show his face for the first 45 minutes. That was wild, but stupid at the same time. It's like we didn't know who it was going to be. And it's it's an interesting, I don't want to say a framing device, but it's an interesting perspective to use. I think it's pretty goofy, especially in a film when you have Humphrey Bogart, who is widely considered to be one of the finest leading men of the last century. And you have him in either a first-person perspective or his face shadowed most of the time. It's just all right.
Well, clearly Jack Warner agreed with you, because at the time Humphrey Bogart was the highest paid leading man in film. I believe by 1947 he was commanding something like $450,000 a year, which I don't know what the inflation rate. Yeah, he was wildly well paid and popular. So it's my understanding that when Jack Warner saw this movie and realized that for an hour and 45-minute movie, for the first hour you do not see the leading man, he was livid. Having said that, I think it's a really ballsy thing to do, particularly in 1947. At that point, there had been a couple of movies that sort of trafficked in first-person perspective, but not to the length that this movie did. Certainly, there was and I think in 1927 there was a movie, Lady in the Lake, that used it a little bit, and then just the year before, no, Lady in the Lake was 1946. I'm sorry, the 1927 was Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, which they did a lot of at the beginning. They used a lot of first person perspective, and then Lady in the Lake just 1 year before they did it a little bit as well. I don't think any movie achieved the technical grace as far as first person that this movie did. In fact, I was marveling at some of the early shots. For those of you who don't know, this movie is about a convict from San Quentin. He was convicted falsely for murdering his wife, and he escapes and makes his way back to San Francisco, where he interacts with a bunch of people, and he ends up getting plastic surgery to change his face so he can continue his investigation and prove who actually killed her.
Plastic surgery for $200.
Hey man, back alley.
That only lasts 1 week to essentially give him a new face. Because I don't care what you say, that person who was Vincent Parry looks nothing like Humphrey Bogart.
That is true, and that was a character actor as well, and I forget his name at the moment.
I find it funny that what they should have done was just had it be Humphrey Bogart, but like a fucking what's that thing where you have the magnetic Pharaoh fuzz, the wacky walk, and it's just like he has like a scar and like a mustache and like some, I don't know, big eyebrows and like a big chin, like just comically fake.
They might have wanted to just do a little makeup on Humphrey Bogart and then use that photo.
Yeah, use the little wacky willy board and just like put some shavings on there and just be like, okay, this is Humphrey Bogart. Like, this is an amateur sketch of what it looks like. It's just like Humphrey Bogart with a mustache. No, it's like clearly someone else.
Oh yeah, 100%. But I'm not mad at that. Look. The first half of this movie I was watching, and I just thought it was technically, no. I'm not gonna prevaricate here. Like, I really loved the first half of this movie.
Yeah, the first half is fun. The first half, yes, the first person perspective is a gimmick. That's the only thing you can call it, is a gimmick. But
you know what?
Works.
We've been inundated for the past 20 years with movies that have done first-person perspective because it's so cheap and easy to do with the video camera. I was about to say,
what I think of the thing that this movie really reminded me of was Doom or Hardcore Henry.
Yeah, or like Blair Witch or anything where we're supposed to be operating a camera. Like, okay, got it. But there are moments sort of early on, and I like that they don't just stick to the first person perspective. The camera does go to third person on occasion, but something as simple as when he first gets free from San Quentin, he like rolls down the hill in the barrel off of the San Quentin truck, and as he's escaping, like, we go to the first person perspective for the first time there, and he runs up to a fence and the camera goes over that fence and continues the shot. Like, that's pretty goddamn masterful. This is 1947 we're talking about here, so I think the cameraman actually should have gotten top billing in this particular movie, because we've got a lot of narration from Humphrey Bogart from the beginning. But putting aside that, there's some shots where, like, for instance, he gets picked up by a car, like, while he's hitchhiking, and it goes from a real location to a clearly on a set with a poor man's process behind them, to back to a real environment where they're driving through the sort of hills surrounding San Francisco, back to a set. Like, we're so attuned to notice these things, these sort of changes now, but it's actually, like, incredibly well directed. And the editing is superb in this movie.
Oh, I also thought that first stand of scenes before they get to Lauren Bacall's apartment it's suspenseful. It's really good.
Very good, yeah.
It's great. I mean, it does a good job of putting you in the shoes of Bogart's. I keep wanting to call him Bogart. I'm sorry. That's the Harry Potter idiot in me. But putting it from his perspective is a pretty novel idea. And it really works because it allows them to really ratchet up the tension. I mean, not that you think that his character is going to get caught in the first 5 minutes of the movie, though. But
at the same time, I kind of thought he was. Like, there were a couple of times where I'm like, well, you're not getting out of this.
You know what it reminded me of, and I know that this is something that, again, this plays right into something, and you probably know exactly where I'm going with this. it plays into something that I thought about, that because of your background with it, because of our background with it, you thought about. I know you had to have thought about it, was the final episode of the 6th season of Tales from the Crypt, You Murderer, which rips this off almost
tremendously.
Entirely.
Yeah.
Like, beyond where anyone should realistically be ripping this off. And it's even got Humphrey Bogart in it. But not Humphrey Bogart.
Sure does.
It's got, what's the guy's name? The man with Bogart's face.
Oh, I know who you're talking about. Yeah,
Rocco Spink. Oh God, what the fuck is that guy's name? So yeah, Robert Sacchi or Sacchi probably. That it has him in there, but it does that same thing where it's the first person perspective with Humphrey Bogart, and it's like there's no way you couldn't think about that. But now that I know where that's coming from, this is like 10 times better. I mean, that episode is shit anyways. That episode's really bad.
It is, but it does have Sherilyn Fenn. I mean,
it does. And it has John Lithgow, and he was the Trinity Killer.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. Fucking cunt. Stupid cunt. I gave you everything, and I can take it away. It does have Sherilyn Fenn. Audrey Horne from Twin Peaks.
Yeah, Sherilyn Fenn. I'm a huge fan.
I bet everyone is
from a certain age. Yeah,
every hormone-induced boy of the 90s was. But this is, I think the issue with this movie becomes once you shift away from the first-person perspective, where you have like this dream sequence when he's on the operating table at the plastic surgeon's office, and then you have.
Can we talk about that for a second?
Yeah, go.
Because I love that.
I thought that was really interesting.
It really was. It is. Now I know this because of the video that I made that brought us together to begin with, Phantom of the Paradise on my YouTube channel. That is the whole sequence is very much based on an editing style created by a guy named Slavko Vorkapik, who is a Hungarian editor who came to Los Angeles during the 20s and 30s. They would just bring him in to create these flights of fancy kind of sequences. Anyway, Slavko Vorkapik was an amazing editor, and that whole sequence is sort of in his style, where you have multiple images of the same thing sort of swirling around and absolute craziness. Like, I loved that moment in the movie. It's a good sort of entree to where we're going to just be third person for the rest of the film. Wow, I can't believe I loved this movie more than you. I really enjoyed this film, so...
My issue with the movie is the second half of the film is really like when he's trying to hunt down his wife's true killer. It's just kind of a drag. It kind of just slogs along. Yeah, it kind of slogs along because
I don't know. I thought it was really tense.
You're only introduced to like two other characters, so you know it has to be one of the two. It's either Bob or Madge, and of course it's Madge. They almost like give it away, and it's like there's not. I mean, they did such a good. Here's the issue: they did such a good job establishing the suspense and intrigue in the first 30, 40 minutes of the film in first person, and then in the second half where you've got Humphrey Bogart. I just need to call him Humphrey, not Bogart, because it's just going to keep screwing it up. They have him looking for his wife's true killer, and it's like, well, of course it was her. Who else would it be? And then you have I think that my other favorite part of the film is the conclusion, because it's just like, that is, in my mind, noir. It's like the good guy can't even make things right. Even if he wants to, even if he knows he can, even if he is innocent, which he clearly is, the woman who killed his wife falls out of a fucking window. Falls, or maybe he pushed her. I would be in the camp of he clearly pushed her out the fucking window, but whatever.
Could have been one or the other, yeah. But I don't know. I mean, look, I get the sense that the first part of the movie is wildly tense, and that sort of slackens a bit during the second half. Nevertheless, there are moments of tension in the last half of this movie that I think are great. One of the things I really like about this movie is how happenstance everything seems to be. Like all of these seemingly random coincidences add up to something. I think it's a pretty good perspective on life in general. I like that the guy he picked up at the beginning sort of shows up as not necessarily a red herring. That's not the right term for it, but becomes this sort of agitator for the end. I like that the Lauren Bacall character who picks him up and sort of keeps him safe for a while he's recuperating, didn't really have any interaction with him sort of prior to this. It's just sort of thing. But then she is, in a way, connected to the entire thing because she is good friends with the actual murderer. For me, there was a lot to like in this movie, and that perspective is definitely part of it. But I thought that the last half of this movie, I thought had some incredibly tense moments, starting with the scene in the diner with the cops sort of randomly hassling him. I didn't know where it was going, and I thought that's a really good sequence.
I did like that sequence. And then the diner owner was like, I should have just kept my fat mouth shut. I don't think you not saying anything would have stopped anything. This guy looks almost just like the guy they're looking for.
Let me point out that the diner owner, Harry, I guess is his name because it was Harry's Diner. That guy's named Tom Fadden, who was a character actor all throughout the 30s, 40s, 50s. He's actually in It's a Wonderful Life. He's the guy in the toll booth bridge when oh my God, why am I forgetting his name right now? Jimmy Stewart.
I've never seen that movie.
Oh my God in heaven. Okay, well, Jimmy Stewart, you know the story. Jimmy Stewart.
No, I actually have no idea what the film is.
What? Okay, no, I won't remember.
Is it just a Christmas Carol? It's just a Christmas Carol, right?
No, it's not, because he's not visited by three ghosts and they don't show him his entire life and where he's going. Instead, it's him wanting to kill himself and an angel showing. He actually doesn't. He's going to kill himself, but he really just wishes he was never born. And so an angel shows up to show him what life in the town that he grew up in would have been like without him. And everything is.
That just sounds like a millennial's dream. The movie.
Yeah, well, But,
this movie was ahead of its time. What would life be like if I wasn't born? Better. That's the answer.
No, in this case, it's miserable. Everyone he loves and cares for.
Because the movie was made in the 40s, so of course everyone's miserable without him. Can you imagine? Can you imagine that movie now? It'd be like, what would everyone's life be like without you? Great, just peachy, perfect.
Well, there's something there's a remake of it for you, That would be pretty good, actually. Oh, everything would be so much better if you weren't here. You're absolutely right.
A Wonderful Life, but it's just called Middle of the Road Life.
Yeah. It's an okay life.
It's an okay life.
It's a meh life.
That's the millennial. That's the millennial version. It's a meh life. I tell you what, though. The cinematography in this film is fantastic.
Really good.
Mm-hmm. Sidney Hickox did a fantastic job. Delmer Daves also fantastic. Again, what's kind of weird to me, and I know that this might sound sacrilegious or God knows what, the fact that Humphrey Bogart, and this is his first movie I've seen with him in it, he plays it so flat. I was expecting more from his performance, and maybe I shouldn't have been.
No. Let me speak to that a little bit, because I think even the sort of critical reaction at the time was this is not his purview. Bogart is a force of nature in 99% of the movies. This was one where he was he's kind of playing the victim here, and that maybe isn't the best entree to him. I'm sure if you watch any movie he's in sort of after this, you'll see what a magnetic personality he is. He was playing against type, which I'm not in any way mad at. I actually enjoyed his performance because that was the character, and he, is a really good actor. So he knew he couldn't sort of turn it on for this particular performance. But, if you go back and watch Treasure of the Sierra Madre or The Maltese Falcon, holy God, he's so good in that. Or even, there are a couple of films where he was the villain sort of early on. In fact, there's a movie called The Roaring Twenties, which is actually a James Cagney vehicle, where he's the villain in that, and he's so good and slimy in that film.
I actually take it back. I have seen another Humphrey Bogart film. It was when I was a kid, and it was Treasure of the Sierra Madre.
Oh, there you go. He's
but
great
I don't
in that
remember
movie,
it. I just remember thinking like his character in that movie was insane, which
he kind of is.
He kind of is. That's the film with the batches we don't need no stinking batches line, right?
Yeah, and the hey friend, can you help out a fellow American who's down on his luck, which got parodied a lot at the time. In fact, there's an entire Bugs Bunny cartoon where Humphrey Bogart keeps showing up as a character and just saying that one line over and over again. That's a marvelous film. It's been remade sort of tangentially over the years 1,000 times. Bogart is he's one of these guys where I think, like you take an actor like Cary Grant, who's, a massive movie star, and he's always kind of playing himself. And I think Bogart gets lumped into that category, the sort of movie star category. But I think he's an incredible performer. In fact,
but again, I think that in this film, if you're looking to watch this film for like a Bogart high quality performance, I'm not sure that this is the one you point people to, right?
No, if you want to see him at his best, it's what?
Especially for not even for his like noir canon of films.
Right, and most of his career was spent in noir.
I would be in noir too if I looked that fucking cool wearing a hat. I mean, He just looks. I mean, he looks it. I mean, he looks the part when he puts that hat on, that fedora. It's just like, okay, I get it. Like, I completely understand why you were the guy at the time and why you're considered to still be one of the guys of all time. Like, you just look the part, and not only do you look the part, because you can look the part. I mean, fuck, Jason Momoa looks the part for Aquaman, but he can't act his way out of a fucking paper bag. But he backs it up, Bogart does, because he's such a damn charismatic actor.
Yeah, he has the it factor that used to get bandied around a lot in Hollywood. There's something sort of magnetic about the guy where you just you want to hear what he has to say next, or you want to focus on him, which is one of the reasons I like this movie so much. As I said, you take him as the lead and then you don't even show him for half the movie. I do wish that he was a little more dynamic in the last half, but I get that he's playing this particular character who is not in any way dynamic. He's just sort of a sad sack guy who's trying to right the wrongs that were dealt to him.
And you would think he'd be more motivated to do so. You think he'd be like really angry about not being able to find who killed his wife and him being in jail. You think he would be really pumped up about fucking righting the wrongs, and he's just like, meh.
Well,
I've got to find my wife's killer. Okay, sure. But
I agree that clearly has been driving him for the entire time he was in San Quentin. He wants to get out and prove that. But that's another thing that I really like about this movie is that once it comes out sort of through the dialogue that it was not a happy marriage to begin with, and so. He does want to right that wrong because he was wronged. I don't necessarily think he's all that interested in solving his wife's murder. He's just more interested in proving his innocence. And once he meets Lauren Bacall, he realizes that that's kind of more important, even though he allows his quest for not necessarily vengeance but redemption to sort of supersede that. Because that's where the movie is going, and that's one of the things I like about the movie so much. I think I'm gonna, I guess, disagree with myself and you here at the end, because I think the last half of this movie is very tense, and because it's a noir, which, by the way, is a period of filmmaking that it started before World War II technically, but it really hit its stride. After the war ended, and it's probably because you had an entire group of filmmakers who maybe were in the industry before the war and then came back from it, but more specifically an entire group who had not yet been in the film industry and came back from the war, and were no longer interested in just sort of trifles where we were just having a good time. They, suddenly everyone was interested in telling stories that were dark. I mean, they had seen the worst humanity had to offer in the European and Pacific theaters. My point being that, noir films tend to end pretty badly, particularly if we
everybody involved.
Right. And, if your character starts off okay and you get drawn into a web, then that character's probably going to be okay by the end.
What's the name of the movie that I just watched earlier this year? It's the one that they have like the clown masks. Oh my god, I'm kicking.
You're talking The Killing.
Yeah, like that movie that ends poorly for everyone.
Everybody, yeah.
This ended on such a positive note. I was like, this isn't even noir, and I know nothing about noir.
No, it absolutely is noir, because noir is more about exploring the kind of dark underbelly of American society and the characters that dwell there. The outcome is not necessarily set in stone as part of the genre, but it not only has to deal with that sort of particular subset of American culture, but it is also based on the lighting scheme, which owes a lot to German Expressionism from the 20s and 30s. So that's really because there's a huge debate whether noir is a genre or just a particular subset of films that came out in a particular time. Now, I think 70, 80 years removed, we can see that it is a genre because they keep making them. And we've had weird variations over the years. During the 80s, there was a lot of neon noir, and occasionally people dip back into it. But if you get that sort of weirdo shadowed lighting scheme and you're dealing with kind of a murder mystery-esque kind of thing, that's enough to sort of qualify as a noir. And also, if you have an evil female character, like it or not, that's probably going to be a noir, which this one sort of qualifies for. But the outcome, it doesn't have to end badly for everybody in order for that to qualify. But I will say, 9 times out of 10, everyone's going to be not satisfied at the end of a movie. So
I guess that was my expectation. And I shouldn't have expected that, but at the same time, that's what I think everyone's expectation is with noir.
Yeah,
because like you said, 9 times out of 10,
sure,
this is the one film. Like, okay, so they embrace at the end and they live happily ever after.
Oh my god, I was so excited. I'm
okay with it in this film. Like, it doesn't bother me one bit. Like, I'm glad because I was invested in the characters. It would have been a little weird for Lauren Bacall to just be like, and now I've turned on you. Like, whatever.
Yeah, but that would have been totally within keeping with the noir thing.
I was expecting it. I was like, there's got to be the other shoe has to drop because this is noir. And then nothing.
She
like
very
that
easily could have been. Yeah, she could have easily been revealed to be like she had an ulterior motive the entire time.
She could have easily been the killer.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Like, because the motivation.
Honestly, it would have been more believable for her to be the killer than some random third tier character in the film, like that we see. Like, we see like 3 times in the movie, and then the 4th time is pushed out or falls out of a window.
Yeah, but I think we're a bit inured to having front-loading information in movies these days, where we have to meet that character and we have to understand their motivation, or at least kind of suspect them. I don't think anyone in 1947 would have, going into this movie, thought Agnes Moorehead is going to be the villain of the movie. I mean, Agnes Moorehead is a fucking fantastic actress, and she does a spectacular job in this movie. The scene where he finally confronts her, she is so good, man. Most people know Agnes Moorehead as Endora, rather. She was a character on Bewitched. For the entire run of that series, she was on that. So most people know her as a comedic actress, but she could occasionally hit the high notes dramatically. If you watch the original Twilight Zone series, there was an episode called The Invaders, which is about a woman in a farmhouse being menaced by these tiny aliens, these little metal suited creatures that just keep attacking her, and then she ends up like bashing them and destroying them all. And it turns out, because they have to have a twist, that they were Americans. These tiny figures were on an alien world, but she did that entirely in silent. There's no dialogue at all in that particular story. Agnes Moorehead is fantastic. I don't think audiences at the time were gonna suss out that she was the killer. I think they were kind of maybe banking on that because, as I said, she's more of a comedic actress. So I'm not in any way mad at that. I liked that, and she pulls off that sort of confessional scene like so well. And I didn't know she was going out that window either, man. Like,
well, and the thing is, like, that is that does play into the noir aspect of the film. That like we said, like, even though he didn't kill his wife, even though he found the woman who did, he still can't do anything about it.
Yeah, which, I fully expected him to be going back to San Quentin at the end of this, or at least kill himself or accidentally die by the end. The fact that right up until the end where he's trying to get on that bus to Benton, Arizona, and, eventually Peru, like, I was sure the cop was going to catch him. I was sure that he was never going to make it. So the fact that he gets there, and then, on top of that, Lauren Bacall shows up, and they're going to live happily ever after. Look, man, I'm not the type who needs a happy ending for a movie. Whatever ending you want to give me, I'm cool with. But, look, this kind of harkens back to True Romance in a way, where, the intention is that they should all die at the end of this movie. But there was something so heartening when they do get away, and it's not the happiest of endings. Like, they're trapped now in Peru. Like, they can't come back to the United States. Their lives as we know it are obliterated. But at
they
the same
have
time,
each other.
But they, you know what? You say it in such a snarky way. No, they do. That's sweet. I don't know. I liked it. I liked that all of the stars aligned.
Until Humphrey Bogart turns and kills her now, see?
He could.
Yeah,
you never know.
Very well could.
But I don't think that's going to happen. I don't know, man. I like this movie a tremendous amount. I can see how telegraphed everything is, given the amount of time and the amount of movies we've had since then to now. And I'm not asking anyone to watch the movie and try and put themselves in the mindset of an audience in 1947. But there's so much innovation in this film that it's kind of hard to, at least in my mind, to divorce that from, my overall experience. Like, I don't want to say you need to only know what movies were up until this point to get how great it is, but I do think it is a pretty great movie. I do agree, Bogart maybe should have just played into his persona a little more and shown us how magnetic he is. And that actually would have complemented the fact that Agnes Moorehead is so in love with him, and that's why she committed these murders, because she wanted him all to herself. Like, that could have been something to elevate a little bit.
It almost makes sense, but it doesn't.
Yeah, but, I don't know. I mean, look, it was either going to be Agnes Moorehead or the fellow playing Bob.
Yeah,
but
exactly. Like I said at the beginning, you're introduced to all of two characters in the movie that it could be.
Although the guy who picks him up at the beginning, like, shows back up. That guy's named Clifton Young. He was obviously a character actor. He had such an interesting face with that cleft chin. If you go back to the Our Gang comedies of the sort of late 20s, early 30s, the Little Rascals, he was actually a character in those as a child. His character was named Bone Dust, which is not one of the most remembered Little Rascal characters.
I don't remember that one from the 90s movie.
Alfalfa, Spanky, and Bone Dust.
It fits right in there next to Froggy and Stymie. Bone Dust.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, Darla and Bone Dust.
What the fuck were they on, man?
Yeah, he actually had like a long career. There were, when you used to go to the movies, you would see any number of things before the feature. So you would get a newsreel and a cartoon, and then maybe like a one-reeler, they called them, like a little 10, 20-minute short film. There was an entire series called So You Want to Be, like, so you want to be a babysitter, so you want to be an actor. And he starred in most of those. He's like a gifted comedian. So once again, sort of playing against type. Like, I think he's creepy as fuck in this movie. I think he did a great job. Like that whole sequence where he shakes down Bogart in the hotel room is really good. And again, like, just like the scene that preceded it with the cop, like, trying to figure out who he is, and then the next scene with Agnes Moorehead. Like, I don't think the tension does flag at all in this movie. I think it continues. So I don't know. Overall, I really like the movie. I can see from a 21st century perspective how it could be perceived as, a little dry or a little slow or, not as tense as we're used to necessarily, but I think it's a technical marvel, it's an acting marvel, and I liked how happenstance the script was. It kept me guessing, which I appreciated.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think some of the issue I had with the movie coming into it was the fact that this is my first Humphrey Bogart film that I've watched critically as an adult. This is the first noir film of the month. I had a lot of expectations on it. I was expecting more noir, and it's more dialed back in some respects. And it also has the first-person perspective, which is kind of an interesting, I'm not going to say William Castle-esque gimmick, because it's not like, oh, there's a skeleton that flies over the audience, but it's kind of a gimmick.
Yeah, not
it's a gimmick.
It's gimmicky. It's gimmicky, but it's not. Yeah, it's not like try to get you in the theater because the first half of this movie is going to be first-person perspective. I don't think audiences had any idea going into this movie that for the first half of the movie they were going to be not seeing Bogart. They were going to be Bogart. Which,
again, it works well. I think my expectations were a little in a different spot for what this movie ended up being as well. And that's not the film's fault. That's my own fault, and I thoroughly accept that. So, what would you give the film out of 5?
I give it a 4.
4?
Easy.
Whoa.
Yeah, man. Straight up. Yeah.
Whoa, pal.
I think this. I don't think you're going to waste your time at all watching this movie. I think you're going to have a good time.
I agree with that 100%. You are not going to waste your time watching this movie.
Yeah, and I think, on that technical level alone, the way this movie is shot is pretty goddamn spectacular. Just to see San Francisco as it was back in 1947 is kind of a marvel. All the location work in this movie is pretty goddamn cool.
Yeah.
And
the city is its own thing in the movie, which I appreciate.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is. I mean, everybody says that. Well, Los Angeles.
The city is its own character, guys. Like, in this movie, it totally 100% is.
It absolutely is, and it doesn't seem like by design.
And you can see San Francisco long before there were people overdosing on heroin on the streets.
There you go.
Yeah,
What's better than that?
What's better than that? Yeah, I'll give it a 3 out of 5. It's good. It's interesting. I'm sure that there are better Humphrey Bogart films, noir films out there to watch. But it's
no doubt.
Yeah, this is a competently made, more than competently made, well-acted piece of noir film. However, on Wikipedia, and I don't know how much we really should be looking at Wikipedia as a confirmation of anything, this is not classified as noir.
Well, I mean, I can see it. The sort of the lighting style does not sort of lend itself necessarily to noir. It's
sure.
It isn't as like sharp and angular as most noir films are, but
which again,
nevertheless,
what I was expecting,
it's in that period.
What I was expecting, this was not what I was expecting in that respect, if that makes sense.
No, I get it.
And I also think that also the first-person perspective plays into that. Because when you're sitting in the first-person perspective of the character, you would be seeing the light and shadows playing off that character's face, as opposed to just this is the character. You are looking through his eyes. So they kind of sacrificed the noir parts of this film for something else, which was first-person perspective.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Yeah. So let's take a break and we'll play a preview for the next Culture Cast. That's right. On the next Culture Cast, we're going to be talking about a film that is noir? Question mark?
Maybe.
Maybe?
Could be.
Neo-noir? Question mark? We're going to be talking about Dark City from 1998. Yes, that Dark City, the Kiefer Sutherland film?
Rufus Sewell,
Kiefer Sutherland, Jennifer Connelly is in there. Pretty much that's where it should stop and start, as far as I'm concerned.
No. That movie starts and stops with Mr. Richard O'Brien from Rocky Horror Picture
Richard
Show.
O'Brien.
He is so fucking good in that movie.
I mean, Richard O'Brien is good in everything.
Oh, yeah. But in particular, every time he's on screen in the movie, like, oh, give me more of that.
You've come on a special night. It's one of the Masters of Hairs. Hey, it's Richard O'Brien. Fuck you.
Yeah.
Riff Raff. Fuck you. Shock treatment. If you don't know what we're talking about, you've never seen Rocky. If you've never seen Rocky Horror, like, how?
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know how someone could have made it to 2019 and not have seen Rocky Horror, right? Unless you grew up in like a wherever Rivers Cuomo grew up, like in a whatever that word. Oh God, what the hell is it? He grew up in like a. Oh my God, what's
like a commune?
Well, but there's like a name for it. It's like there's like a weird an ashram. If you grew up in an ashram, you probably haven't seen Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Yeah, and that would be the only excuse at this point because, you know, up until a certain time, it was not on home video, so you actually had to venture to your local weirdo cinema and see it on midnight Friday or Saturday night. But
which,
as soon
by
as it
the
hit
way,
home video,
is the best way to watch it.
Oh yeah, certainly.
I'm not saying that it is not a good movie if you don't see it live. I'm just saying if I had my way of seeing it live, it's going to be live.
Well, everything's better on the big screen. That's just a fact of
and everything. Would you say everything's better with an audience that knows every single beat of the film?
Not necessarily. I think Rocky Horror is one of those movies where I think the movie itself gets short shrift because people think you need the audience participation. You absolutely don't. It is brilliantly conceived and written and acted.
It's
and
not
directed.
like The Room, where that movie is a piece of shit and watching it with other people cracking jokes makes it more fun. Rocky Horror Picture Show, for a lot of us, is like a seminal piece of growing up and like truly finding yourself and finding groups of people that also love the film that you can relate to and connect to. At least it was
Absolutely.
for me. It was for a lot of people I know who got into it the same time I did.
Yeah, it certainly, like, when I got into it, it was in the mid-'80s, so, there was no social media, there was no way to connect with other total weirdos or, people who felt sort of outside the norm, and suddenly you would have this weirdo tribe every weekend where you could connect to people and connect in reverence of a piece of entertainment that itself was kind of outsider.
I mean, it celebrates being gay, being bisexual, being trans,
and horror and sci-fi and musical
it's everything. It might be a perfect movie.
I would agree.
Yeah,
no question. And from the time it came out, it's sort of an achievement, and I don't think that flags in any way over the years. I think other musicals have attempted to sort of ape it or copy it, and nobody comes close. Like, you can tell that movie comes out of a place of love, and it connected with all the right people.
And it came out of Richard O'Brien,
who's in Dark
City. There you go. Because he wrote Rocky Horror, the Rocky Horror Show, which became the Rocky Horror Picture Show, which then went on to foster a sequel, Shock Treatment, which I think has gotten more play recently. A lot more play.
I hope so. I love that movie.
I haven't seen it in a very long time, but I own the soundtrack on vinyl.
As do I. It's in a lot of ways, I like the songs in Shock Treatment more than the songs in Rocky Horror. How's that for sacrilege?
Ooh, that's not sacrilege. They're the same. They're in the same oeuvre. That's the second time I've used that word now in the last month. So it would have been nice to see the actual sequel that they were talking about come out. Where,
the Return of the Old Queen?
Yeah, man. Holy shit. Wouldn't that have been something?
Would have been great, but then, at the time, Tim Curry he had been playing that role for so long.
Yeah, at the time, Tim Curry was like, get me away from this, please. I mean, for the longest time,
I'm sure he was stoked
talk about it, right?
Yeah, well, that's because that's all anyone wanted to talk about, and he, I think he's come into his own as far as the public consciousness about what a great performer he actually is, but I'm sure every interview he ever did, they were like, let's talk about Frankenfurter. And he was like, that's a period of my life from 20 years ago where I played that role thousands of times on stage, and then I thought I was capping it off with the movie, and you're still talking about it. Can we talk about something else? It's
now
like talking to Gary Oldman about Sid and Nancy.
Pennywise the Clown.
Yeah, exactly,
So, on that podcast, I'm going to be joined by my good friend, the writer of the Mothman Prophecies, and currently a writer on DC Titans, Mr. Richard Haddam. Until then, where can people find you, Father Malone?
Find me on my YouTube channel, OughtFiveFilms. You can check out one of my 2 shows. I've got one called Unaired Pilots, which is new, and my long-running show, You've Never Seen, about movies just like the ones we're talking about here. You can also hear me over on Chronicles from the Crypt, the podcast about the HBO television series Tales from the Crypt. You're on that, Chris. Did you know that?
Yeah, I may or may not have started that podcast 2 separate times, and finally,
Indeed,
the third time, we're going to actually finish it.
Third time's the charm, where you can also hear me over on Dreams for Sale, the Twilight Zone 85 podcast, which is you and me and our good friend, Mr. Mike White, Detroit's own Mike White.
Quentin Tarantino's favorite podcaster, Mike White.
Oh my God, he loves Mike White. They're like so
bosom
close.
buddies. Oh, Lord. And you can find me over on Twitter at casualty_Chris. I didn't have to change my name for Halloween, and I'm not changing it back, because guess what? That's what my name on Twitter is. You don't like it? Deal with it. You do like it?
Deal with it.
deal with it also. So there you go. So yeah, and then culturecast.com is where you can find out more about this episode, all the other episodes. Patreon.com, we got a couple more Patreon supporters, so thank you. You know who you are. Thank you so much. And if you want to be one of those Patreon supporters, I wouldn't turn it down. Every little bit helps keep the lights on over here at 6969 Culturecast Way. So, and yeah, big thanks to _91 for the music for the Culturecast, and to you, Father Malone, for embarking on getting the ship sailing for Noirvember.
My pleasure.
And we'll catch you on the next episode.